This week's Inside the Huddle is sponsored by Rabel's Auto Service. Service as it ought to be. They provide quality parts and service every time. They're located at 1610 Salina Road in St. Mary's, or you can call them at 419-394-1624 for your auto service needs.
Hey readers and followers, I am Jake Dowling from the Evening Leader, week 12 of Inside the Huddle. With me as always is Seth Kinker from the Minster Community Post. And this week, Lima Central Catholic will play New Bremen in the state semifinal. And pretty big game last week for the Cardinals. I mean, knocking off Marion Local, that was pretty amazing. And for them to be one game away from winning their first state title in the program history, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So we'll talk about that a little bit, kind of do a recap here for last week's games. New Bremen won the Division 7 Region 28 championship against Marion Local 24-17 and catapulted by 14 fourth quarter points by the Cardinals, and big plays for New Bremen. They had the blocked field goal and then obviously the blocked punt return for a touchdown. So that really catapulted them into that win and beating, not only beating Marion Local, but also beating them at home at Maria Stein. That's a feat in itself. Top ranked team as well as they took down. LCC is making their fourth straight playoff appearance. Their ninth in 11 years. They beat Hopewell Loudon 62-20 to capture its first regional title since 2010. And you know, Lima Central Catholic, and I wrote this in my story and Tuesday's Evening Leader, but LCC is another state-ranked team that New Bremen will be playing. LCC is 5th ranked, and they've played, going into this game, that will be their third state-ranked team that they played in the postseason, that being New Bremen. And they're playing, you know, for a program who doesn't have a whole lot of pedigree in the postseason. They have 4 playoff appearances, including this year. They're 2-2 going into last year in the postseason. They're 6-1 in the last 2 years combined in the postseason, and they're playing like they've been here before, beating state-ranked teams. For Lorme, who was 3rd state-ranked, obviously top-ranked Marion Local, and now they're playing number 4 LCC. And the winner of that game then will play number 4 seeded, the winner between number 4 seeded Warren John F. Kennedy and Newark Catholic next week at Fortress Betts, which is about southeast of Columbus. And that's where the state final is being held this year. The regional final, or the state semifinal between New Bremen and LCC, will be at 7 p.m. Friday at Mercer Health, Wapak Ford Field, and Wapakoneta. They got a name change, by the way. They used to be Harmon Field, but they changed it this year. So that's kind of what's on slate for this week. New Bremen, obviously, with a huge matchup. What's the lowdown on the Cardinals for this week?
Yeah, so facing the Thunderbirds, they are 9-1. It's a team that, I mean, they're like the matchups that New Bremen has gone through. It's a team that scores a lot of points and doesn't give up a lot. The LCC is averaging 42 points, giving up just 18. This is their second trip to the state semifinals. So you've got two programs here that like really haven't been to this stage. So it's really big for both of their communities. LCC made it in 2010, and New Bremen, this is their first ever trip. Last year they made it to the regional finals and fell to Marion Local, so they got a little bit of revenge this year. The big thing for LCC is they lost their leading rusher, Sean Thomas, a couple weeks ago. But the big thing there is they've replaced him quite easily and handily. They've had Rossi Moore and Quintel Peoples both kind of step into those roles. Rossi Moore is their linebacker. He's a big physical guy who's also fast. He's 6'1", 205. So head coach Chris Schmidt said he's not afraid of contact. At the same time, when you look at Quintel Peoples, he kind of compared the other running back to Zach McKibben of Coldwater, who they faced kind of earlier this year. He's a smaller guy, but he's fast, and he kind of can get lost behind that line. And if he gets out in the open field, then he said he's gone. He's very fast. And that kind of leads right into the next point. Schmidt highlighted their speed. He said when he watched the film on them, that's the first thing that kind of jumped out to them. And it's a team that really likes to use jet sweeps, fly sweeps, whatever you want to call them, and get to the edge. They want to utilize that speed. So he said for them, one of the keys is kind of on the defensive side of the ball, they need to control or contain the edges. If they don't do that, it's going to be a long evening for them. At the same time, while you're focusing on the run, which is what they heavily like to do, you got to watch out for that play action pass. He said he's noticed that, you know, if teams get too nosy, start getting up to the line more, they have no problem throwing that play action pass. Their quarterback went 8 for 8 last week with 2 touchdowns, so they've shown they can throw the ball. So he said they kind of need to force those long drives, kind of with the nature of high school football. If you force a team kind of to go the length of the field to continue to drive, don't give up those big plays. They're either going to they might stall it, whether it's a false start penalty, an interception, defensive stop, whatever one of those things that can come up in high school football. So he said kind of just forcing them into those long extended drives and not giving up those big plays is a big key. Defensively, the thing that he said stood out watching them on film is they're a man-to-man team across the board. So they're cover zero over the top, which means they're going to bring that extra man or two into the box to look to stop the run, something that is New Bremen's bread and butter, how they like to kind of establish their offense, use that run game, and then kind of go into the pass. So kind of similar to Marion Local, a key there I took away is he said, you're going to have to run effectively. Against Marion Local, Mitchell Hayes had that touchdown in the first half. That was a really bruising run. They didn't have a ton of rushing yards, but when they did run it, they ran effectively more than they did in their first matchup, was lost to Marion Local week 2. So it's going to have to be, again, running effectively against a defensive line and offensive line that he said has size. He said he noticed a couple guys on the roster with like 250 plus and a couple guys around 300. So size is going to be a factor. He said we can't just run it straight at them, and it's like, can't we run into a brick wall? Kind of similar again to Marion Local. So they were able to overcome that against Marion Local with kind of getting some big plays in the special teams. So that'll be big there. And kind of just to close, I said, when it comes to it, what are you kind of looking at this game for keys to the game? Obviously, you want to execute on your side of the ball and things like that. Win the turnover battle, big plays. And he said, kind of broke down all 3 phases for me. He said, quote, for the most part, the formula stays the same. Our defense needs to try and limit the big plays. Offensively, we've got to move the ball and score some points. Even if we don't score, we have to make sure we're driving the ball to keep it out of their hands. And he said, finally, special teams. You saw it last week. It made the difference in the game. If we win on special teams again, that would certainly help. So yeah, I mean, the battle for kind of seeing if teams can, which team can kind of limit the run game. Both teams like to run the ball again, so I think that's going to be the key for me. And if specifically addressing LCC speed, if they can kind of keep that control or contain the edges, seems to be the key for me there. So
obviously, Wapak has a turf field. That's what the OHSA is now aiming toward as teams or stadiums with the turf field. Does that really play into a role, do you think, a little bit? Because LCC plays at Spartan Stadium in Lima, and that's obviously a turf field. Would that factor into maybe more speed for them, or does that not really matter at this point of the season, do you think?
I don't think it matters at this point in the season. I mean, maybe with it being this late in the season, teams have already gone through kind of finding their identity and knowing what they want to do, what athletes kind of want to get at their hands to. Even with these past couple weeks losing their leading rusher in Sean Thomas, you've seen them. You went over their scores earlier. It hasn't really slowed them down. They've continued to put up those points. So that rushing attack, I think, will still remain potent for New Bremen. That New Bremen has to face.
It should be really good, and obviously, whoever comes out of this game will go to the state final. Both teams have never gone to a state final before. Both programs have never done that, so that would be pretty cool. And like I said, usually it's in Canton, or it's been in the past, it's been in Columbus. This would be at Fortress of Betts, which is the new site for cross-country state final, and then also football state final. So if they win, if New Bremen wins, we'll be back next week. As always, follow us on the Evening Leader on Facebook and on Twitter. Obviously, our print edition will have the New Bremen LCC football game preview and Thursday's print edition, and then Minster Community Post, as always, on Facebook and Twitter, and their weekly print edition. So until then, we'll see you next week. Take care.